Hello, my name is Arthur, and in this video we'll do a little further looking at terrain and environment. So this is the map that I built from the results from the project in my last video. So I put together a few hills and made two copies of each hill and merged them down into the larger plane. Gave them some collision shapes, and I extruded up a wall and gave it a collision shape and separated it as objects. So we can look quickly at collision shapes. So that's the wall. It's just a simple edge extrusion. The collision shape is made out of 8 vertices. And basically it's just a copy of the wall with its material stripped away and then given the extension minus coal only. And the same thing with the hill collision shapes, which they're simplifications of the hill model. So anywhere that a flat surface can be defined by less vertices, I reduce the number of vertices that shape is defined by. So this is one of the bigger examples where if we were to look, let's get into object mode so we can compare that to the ground. So this is the ground's mesh, and then there's the collider's mesh, which is a simplification of the ground mesh. And yeah, that's a little bit time consuming to do. It takes a little bit of practice, but this is probably the better way to go about it than turning the entire mesh into a collider, because it's less expensive. It's less expensive to have less points defining a collider this way. So it uses less system resource basically. So the hills have that collision shape, and the ground was just given a box shape. I'm really not sure on the box shape for the ground. I'm not sure that's working all that good, and I'm wondering if a blender collision shape would actually be functioning better for me. And yeah, I seem to get some strange vehicle bouncing on the ground that goes away when it's up on the collision hills. So this is what the scene looks like so far. I have this previous example, which is a little more complicated. The edges are not set to smooth. So this model did not have smoothed faces. If we were to look at that, we can see two things. The not smoothed faces has a bad effect with the light because this has an environment added to it. And this is the vehicle bouncing on that box shape that I was mentioning. So I'm not really sure on that and if the box shape is actually working out. So this line here is the reason why I came up with nicer tiles. Now part of that is from not having smoothed faces, and this map is built differently. This has a plane rather than a grid, with the roads just sitting on top of the plane. So I'm not sure that smoothing these edges would make much difference in this line. But this line is also largely created by the fact the texture wasn't made to be tileable. And that can be seen in other places. Pretty much anywhere that I go, I can find the repeating pattern of the tiled texture on top of this large plane, because it's a repeating pattern to create this appearance. And if we looked right here, we can see the edge of that repeating pattern where it doesn't mate well with the next iteration of itself. So that doesn't happen in this one. The edges are mating up pretty nicely, and the color variance will be softer because this does have its faces set to smooth, This doesn't have the bumps in the road, so it simplifies the collision shape by not putting those lumps into the road. So that's a matter of choice. I'm kind of both ways on it. I like the vehicle kind of thumping over top when it crosses the road because that makes sense. But it's also more difficult to model and to make the collision shapes. So there's two sides to that, really. What this needs now is an environment, so that's what we'll do next. We'll add in a world environment and we'll configure that. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that it's not like this. And first thing that will happen is we'll make an environment that's just like that, because that's kind of how it works. So we're more or less going to take what would be the default environment and change the way that it works. So we'll do a sky, and the default scene is a new procedural sky. So this is right back to the default parameters. So we'll come into the sky and we'll start changing things a bit. I like a deeper blue, so I want a deeper blue. So I'm gonna tweak that. We can see the effect. We can see how much blue cast is coming from that. See, if we change this to light, we're going to get something that's a little more color true. We're going to stop the environment from doing that at all. So we'll be able to afford a deeper blue sky. We'll copy out this value. So we'll copy out its, I don't know what that number is called. It has a name though. We'll paste it into the horizon color. We'll go into hue saturation value and desaturate that until we get the sky horizon that we want. Then I'll copy that value out, and I'll come into ground and I'll paste that value into both of the ground values. That way I don't have that ground. That I don't really like the ground the way that it is. So I just want a sky and a horizon, and the ground comes from my model. So that way I don't have a mysterious gray ground to try to explain away in my head, because it doesn't make sense to me to have a ground horizon, a sky horizon, and a sky. I guess for some scenes that works, but it doesn't work for me. For the sun, let's disappear the ground and the wall, get those out of the scene, so we're just looking at environment. So let's look around and find our sun. And I'm not sure which view that is. That's probably, I don't know how you get to a backwards view from behind. I'm not sure on that, because it's the reverse of this view, but none of the keys that you would do that with in Blender work. So I'm not sure that that's something that's possible. We probably need to center this to get a straight view. Yeah, with it centered, we can get a straight view of that. So what I want to do is I want to change where the sun is in the sky by lowering it. So I want to change its latitude. I'm going to change its latitude down to 30. Because it's going to explain the lighting, it's not going to provide it though. And with the sun a little bit lower in the sky, what happens is it makes more expressive shadows. So when we disable the ability for the sky to provide the light, we'll add in a light that is explained by the image of the sun that isn't actually making the light, if that makes sense. So with it lower in the sky, I'm going to come into ambient light and I'm going to change sky contribution. So I'm going to lower it. If you watch the vehicle here, the vehicle's going to go dark and the tree's going to go dark, because the sky isn't providing the ambient light anymore. So now the scene goes dark and we need to add in our light. So we'll add in the directional light as a child. We'll pull that up just for the sake of seeing it. Now, the light is the sun is shining on the face of the vehicle. So our directional light right off the bat is 180 degrees on Y in the wrong direction. As far as I know, for its angle on X, that's defined by the latitude value we just assigned to the sun, because latitude is a degree as far as I know. So we want this to, the way to think of this ray is not where it's going to, it's where it's coming from. It should be coming from the sun, because the sun is going to explain the light in the scene, not provide it. It provides the explanation for the light. So as far as I know, the longitude value or the latitude value is the same angle value for our light to be pointing. So we'll put that at -30. And if we're to move around so that the light is in between our point of view and the camera, that arrow should be pointing directly at us. That means that the ray is coming from the light. Where the light is doesn't matter at all. So with the light in the right direction, we want to enable its shadow, so it casts a shadow. And I like to change the color of that shadow because I think black is all wrong. So I'm going to lighten that up a whack load, somewhere around there. And that will cast a shadow that to me looks more proper. So with a light set up like that, we can take that light and we'll enter a translation value of -20 and boop, throw it down beneath the floor where it's not in the way at all. It's going to do the same thing. Where the light is doesn't matter. The way the light acts is that it's somewhere way off in the distance at the beginning of the ray that defines its direction. So if we look at that, that gives the appearance that the sun is casting the light, and that makes the scene look right. So we'll just run and have a look at this and see how the scene looks. I know they're not the greatest graphics, like they're kind of a little bit simple, but they all work out and it has a nice contiguous look to it. We can't see a whole bunch of edges from the tiling of the image textures. And with the hills rounded, the shading, the light shading along edges and stuff looks pretty proper. Like everything comes across pretty nicely for this low poly effort. There is still a little bit of that vehicle bounce, but yeah, I don't really have a solution to that yet because this is still in the sort of world of Godot 3D physics. Are they quite ready for game efforts? There's a question there, that if they are actually quite ready for game efforts. So this is an issue with the rigid body versus the kinematic body versus the vehicle body, and has more to do with the vehicle than the scene itself. So that's about it for this video. I think I'll start looking at how to get some enemy movement happening. So I was thinking something along the lines of maybe getting some enemy vehicles to drive along roads and see if I can get them to do that and look reasonable doing it. So that would be what I'm looking to do, and until then, I hope this video was helpful, and take care.